Okay, I'd like to call this morning's meeting of the Oxnard City Council Public Works and Transportation meeting to order. Time is 11:01. I'd like to read a statement first. The meeting is held pursuant to the State Emergency Services Act, the Governor's Emergency Declaration, and the Governor's Executive Order N-2920 to allow members of the City Council and staff to participate via teleconference pursuant to the Ventura County Public Health Officer Order and Governor's Executive Order N-33-20. All city buildings are temporarily closed to the public. Is encouraged to view the meetings from home on the city's website at oxnard.org/city-meetings, Spectrum Channel 10, Frontier Channel 35, or the YouTube at youtube.com/Oxnard News. Video recordings are typically available online immediately following the meeting. The public may provide comments to the City Council via email at cityclerk@oxnard.org no later than 8 a.m. on the day of the meeting. Please identify the committee name, meeting date, and agenda item in the email subject line. A telephone option for public comment is also available at this time due to the State of California stay-at-home order. Requests to speak must be submitted no later than 8 a.m. on the day of the meeting. Use the form on the city's website to submit your request, oxnard.org/city-meetings, or call the city clerk's office at 805-385-7803, or email your request to cityclerk@oxnard.org. Okay, moving to item number A, roll call, posting of the agenda, and a flag salute. And Ms. Ascension, can you lead us in the flag salute when we get to that spot? But can we take the roll call first, please?
Sure. Member Flynn.
Present.
Member McDonald.
Here.
Chair Perrello.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum, and the agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall kiosk on Wednesday, October 21st. And if everyone would please stand for the flag salute.
Okay, and can we have a moment of silence? There was a news story about a 3-year-old child that accidentally shot themselves. Gun safety and accidental, killings with guns. Have a moment of silence to all those involved.
Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. First item of business is public comments on items not on the agenda. We do have one speaker, Mr. Lawrence Paul Stein. Michelle, are we calling Mr. Stein?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Larry. It's 2 minutes for you to speak on items not on the agenda. Please begin.
Are we calling Mr. Stein?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee. I wish to point out to you an item on the agenda has not been approached, and that is the Parks Master Plan. The scope of the Parks Master Plan was written in April 2017, and supposed to be implemented by July 2017. We're now in October 2020. The scope of the Parks Master Plan specified that the contractor under Section L was supposed to apply the estimated cost to develop the Parks Master Plan as well as a source of funding for the Parks Master Plan. That information was not provided by the developer. We are now in October of 2020, 3+ years after the due date of this project. The scope on the city's website specifies dates for the development of this Park Master Plan by 2018. Also on the city's website is a new revised date for the Park Master Plan, again, 2019. We're now in 2020. I've asked for the Park Master Plan since October, and the due date's been pushed multiple times since then. The new revised date for the Parks Master Plan, again, is now in November. Who can believe that date? Because it's been pushed so many times. But the real issue is city staff has not released the costs and the proposed financing for the Parks Master Plan. Again, I submitted a public record request for this information. The developer has not supplied the
10 seconds.
information. I got a document saying dated 2015 what the costs were. This was before the scope went out. Please address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. At the end of the meeting, after we have the, at the chair's prerogative on this one, items for future agendas, before we go to adjournment, maybe we can have the city attorney or the city manager address your questions. Moving on to the next item, consent. And Madam Clerk, I see no other comments for public comment. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, moving on to consent. The City Clerk's Department, the subject, approval of minutes, and the recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee approve the minutes for October 13th, 2020 regular meeting as presented. Are there any questions, discussions, corrections of the minutes? And if not, do we have a recommendation from staff? From
Move approval.
committee. We have a motion from Mr. McDonald,
Second.
a second from Mr. Flynn. Roll call, please.
Member Flynn,
Aye.
Member McDonald,
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Yes.
The
Moving
motion carries 3 to 0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Excuse me for not when you finish. I apologize. Item D, reports. Number 1, Public Works Department. Subject, Channel Islands Beach Community Service District's Third Amendment to Waste. Start over, please. Channel Islands Beach Community Services District, Third Amendment for wastewater transportation and treatment services. And the recommendation is that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute a Third Amendment to Agreement A-7864 with Channel Islands Beach Community Services District to extend the term from December 31, 2020 to December 31st, 2022 for wastewater transportation and treatment services. And we'll have a presentation, and I'm not sure who will be giving it, but please take it away. And I don't think we'll need to reread the recommendation.
Very good, thank you. Good morning, council or committee chair and committee members. My name is Jan Hauser. I am the wastewater division manager. I have 2 items in front of you today. The first one is an extension of a sewer use agreement with the Channel Islands Beach Community Services District. And it's a time extension only request. All the terms and conditions in the existing agreement will remain. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. So a little bit of background. As I think everybody is aware, we are a regional wastewater treatment system. We serve a number of agencies outside of the city, including the city of Port Hueneme, the naval bases, unincorporated areas outside or unincorporated areas in Ventura County, and the Channel Islands Beach Community Services District. Each one of these is regulated or through a sewer use agreement. So they're all unique and individual to the communities being served outside of the city. So the treatment plant is rated at 31.7 million gallons per day, and we currently treat about 20 million gallons per day. So Channel Islands Beach, they serve an area over around the harbor, for those of you who are familiar with it, including Hollywood Beach, Hollywood by the Sea, Silver Strand, and a couple other parcels that are along the harbor. Okay, one of the unique aspects of this agreement is, and you'll see why in a minute, but we bill them for use of our sewers and the treatment, and they bill us because we use part of their sewer system. So there's a two-way billing built into the agreement. So that's one of the things we want to try to address. Here's a graphic that just shows you roughly what the service district area is of Channel Islands Beach. And you can see it runs from the beach on the west side, south of Channel Islands Boulevard, and over to the naval base on the east side. So a little background on the agreements. The original agreement was executed in May of 2016 and went through the end of 2016. So it was a short agreement. There was a first amendment that again extended the term of the agreement to December 31st, 2018. And then a second amendment that did the same thing. It extended the agreement through 2020. So this we're asking to extend it one more time. So in the meantime, through work with the Channel Islands Beach, we hired a third-party consultant to kind of look at the agreement, look at the infrastructure, service areas, billing, all the kinds of things that are kind of challenging in the existing agreement. So this is a graphic that'll just show you the complexity of the setup. Does this have a pointer on it? On the top? Yeah, okay. Oh, I see. So
Thank you.
everything in blue is.
Thank you very much for using the pointer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So everything in the kind of the green is Oxnard's system and serves Oxnard residents. And everything in blue is Channel Islands Beach infrastructure serving Channel Islands Beach. And you can see a number of our areas go through their system. Here's a lift station, it goes into a force main. Here's another lift station, it goes to another lift station. For such a small area, it's a fairly complex spaghetti of infrastructure. And so that was one of our goals in the study, is to see if we could separate out that infrastructure. So again,
before we go to that slide, can we back up to the next slide? And just so you can tell, so the people that are watching this, or we'll review it later, you used a couple of terms, lift station and force main. Can you give an idea of what a lift station and a force main is? And why?
A lift station is a pump station that collects flow from a certain area by gravity. And then because of the hydraulics, it needs to be pumped up to a higher sewer. So, and the pipe that it pumps into is called a force main. So you can see there's a number of force mains in this little system too. And they pump along Channel Islands Boulevard and into a sewer, just a gravity sewer just north of Channel Islands and Victoria. So there's 3 or 4 force mains in this system that are shared with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, the scope of the work for the consultant study was to look at the shared infrastructure to identify areas that we could meter based on billing, and then the overall service area. And so the study had a number of recommendations in it. The first one was to transfer some of the infrastructure. So for instance, what they call here, I'll back up again. What they call lift station H, right here, that's right east of the bridge over the harbor. It serves only Oxnard residents, but they own and maintain it. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, so that's one of the things. And there's also gravity sewer that we cannot measure the flow. It's not a lot of flow, but it goes to their lift station or their system, and that's over here. So the recommendation was to transfer the ownership of those pieces of infrastructure. The other thing was to meter all the flow. So right now there is no metering. Billing is based on a base rate identified in the original agreement and then increased by rate increases that are passed by City Council. The transfer of infrastructure would also require a modest change of the service districts. And then a new agreement also would need to have industrial pretreatment program or multi-jurisdictional agreement. That's part of our NPDS permit. That's not part of the current agreement. And then again, the billing would have to, so one of our goals is to get the billing to be just one way based on metered flow. So that's the other recommendation. So the way the billing works right now, like I said, there's a base rate that was, we're not sure how it was determined, that for both what we bill them and what we bill, what we bill them and what they bill us. And then that rate has increased based on the rate increases. One is based on the residential rate and one is based on the regional rate. So they're different. So the rates have gotten a little bit out of whack. It's also based on an assumed flow. So none of this is metered. It's basically a flat rate. So this is, I won't go through these tables, but basically this is an expense to this table shows an expense to the city. So we pay this amount to Channel Islands Beach. And then the second table here is the amount that they pay to us. So it's a very confusing agreement, and we hope to simplify it. So that completes this presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Madam Clerk, I see no comments on this item. Am I correct?
Pardon me?
That's correct.
Correct. Okay. Committee members, do you have any questions? And if you do, just ask to go.
I just have one question,
Okay.
and this is more for my own edification than anything else. When Mr. Hauser, when we talk about metering the flow, do we meter it at the lift station as to what comes out of the lift pump, or how do we meter it?
Yeah, that is correct. There's about 6 lift stations or pump stations in this system. And we can install meters on all of those stations. And that would meter all the flow that's going to, from both sides, from our side and their side, that's going to the shared force main. Yes, we actually have put 1 meter on one of our lift stations.
Okay, and then we would just do a pro rata share, like if they have 30% of the users, they get 30% of the flow rate?
So they have actually purchased into our system. They're one of the co-owners of the system, and they have an allotment of flow that they can use, but the billing would be based on the actual flow. So we would measure the flow, their flow and our flow. We would subtract our flow that's metered by their stations, and that's what we would bill them.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Mayor, do you have a question? Mr. Flynn, do you have a question?
Not really, no questions. I think it is kind of interesting because it is a little bit of a complex agreement. I guess my only question is, that could have been part of the presentation, but I've been running back and forth here, taking care of a issue here at home. And my question is how is the community services, what's their perspective, the director and the board of directors of the community services district, about this proposed change in agreement? Are they on board with it 100%? Is it contentious? What do they feel about it?
So I've been working closely with the general manager of the community services district. And one of the reason we're asking for a 2-year extension is to give us time to roll it out to both their board and people within the city, departments within the city, because the changes are going to require, the engineering department, city manager's office, city attorney's office. So there are some issues in there that we need to evaluate on our side for implementation But the general manager, my understanding, has been keeping his board apprised, and this was a joint study done, and we're both in agreement of the, on the recommendations.
Oh, okay. And that really was, Mr. Chair, and committee member McDonald, that was my only concern.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Hauser, it's really good to hear that both sides are in agreement with the results that came out of this. We're at second base.
Yeah, we're making progress. It's been a cordial relationship, I'll tell you that.
That's great.
It's been a
Because,
positive part.
some of these utility rate things have led to recalls and all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, this is really good news for me. But I have a couple of questions. If we can go to slide 5, please. Bingo. Okay, on this particular slide, it doesn't show, and I'm having a little difficulty looking at it compared to slide 7. Are any of the pipelines that we use, they use, or we may partially own, or they may partially own underwater, under the harbor water?
No, they're
Okay.
all under public streets.
Okay, thank you. The second question that I have is, with the pipelines and the possibility of some possibly, acquiring some part of the pipeline or selling some part of the pipeline, I'm not sure how this is going to work. What are the conditions of the pipelines?
So that's part of what we'll need to do jointly with them, is evaluate the condition of the infrastructure that would be swapped. And it's really two things. It's again, a pump station that they currently operate and maintain, but it only serves our customers. And then a gravity sewer line that runs south on Victoria. So one of the things we'll have to do through the implementation is evaluate the condition of those, of the infrastructure.
2 more questions. Have there been any concerns with respect to odors or anything with this particular system, so that the committee is a heads up if there is something that we may be getting into bed with here we didn't know about?
Right. No, there have been no odor complaints or issues with odors in this system.
Okay, thank you. I am aware of something that's been brought to my attention, that this particular area in the county has had some real impacts imposed by short-term rentals. When we're talking about metering, is the metering one of the questions I have, and I know you're working on it, and I really appreciate the presentation, you did a good job. When we're talking about a normal use of a residential unit, or a residential unit that is being used as a business, industrial, or commercial establishment, hotel. I don't know, that wasn't clear enough. Is the rates going to be based on a residential unit, or will there be a consideration for units that have a tremendous more number of people in them than just a normal residential unit?
So we'll end up billing them on a wholesale rate, or what we call the formula rate in our rate ordinance. And they will be responsible for billing the people within their service district. So I'm not sure how they would handle that, but we're going to bill them one bill on a wholesale rate for all of their usage.
Okay, I thank you very much. I enjoyed the presentation. I've learned something here, and good presentation. Do we have any final questions from the committee members? If not, do we have a recommendation?
Move the recommended action.
I'll second it. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Member Flynn. Member McDonald.
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Yes.
Member Flynn.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 3-0.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item. The next item is it's item D2, third amendment for Aquatic Biomass Laboratories Incorporated for ocean monitoring and testing services. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute a third amendment to agreement A-8093 with Aquatic Biomass and Consulting Laboratories Incorporated in the amount of $963,093 for a new not to exceed contract amount of $2,123,026 and to extend the term from June 30th, 2021 to November 30th, 2023 for ocean monitoring and testing services.
Thank you again. My name is Jan Hauser, Wastewater Division Manager. I'm also going to be supported on this one by Jerry Cooper from Special Districts. And again, this is an extension of an existing agreement. It really has two parts. One is the required testing in our discharge permit, our state discharge permit for the wastewater treatment plant. The second half or second part of it is testing in the harbor, water quality testing in the harbor. So again, a little background on the agreement. It was originally awarded in July of 2018. It was a 3-year agreement. Only the first year was approved and it had 2 one-year extensions. And the scope only included the wastewater discharge testing requirements. Then in November of 2018, there was the first amendment that added the Channel Islands testing through special districts for the water quality issues that were happening a couple years ago. The second amendment, which was approved in October of 2019, added new scope and fees for the second year of the wastewater requirements, the wastewater discharge monitoring requirements. One thing to note, though, is back on the first amendment, the agreement was extended all the way through to June 30th of 2021. So the second amendment just added scope and fee for the sampling and testing of the wastewater requirements at the wastewater plant for year two only. So what we are asking, or what we're talking about, is extending this all the way through 2023, their agreement, November of 2023. That will align this contract with ABC Labs with the term of our NPDES permit. So it expires on December 1st of 2023, and this will cover all of our required testing through the permit. So we anticipate going out for bid for the next permit in 2023. So our permit requires really, I think there are 7 distinct areas of testing out in the ocean, which are these listed here. So water quality sampling, benthic or soil monitoring, fish and invertebrate monitoring, seafood safety monitoring, kelp bed monitoring, outfall and diffuser inspection, and toxicity testing. So we do the proposed agreement has all 3 years scope and fee included for all of this testing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry to talk a little bit about the testing in the harbor. So I'm going to wait that.
Thanks, Jan. So in July 2020, Special Districts exhausted our extension of the ABC Labs contract in the amount of $306,000, $306,045, which was approved through the Measure O funding. Special Districts has been working with the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council to determine a cost-sharing plan for the ABC Labs contract that will be funded through the CFDs, the waterways districts, and the general fund, and agreed to an allocation for the $88,243 for this fiscal year 2021. Under the third amendment, we are requesting $264,729, which would get through 3 years of additional water quality testing. That would include the 2 remote sensors that are installed within the harbor, some chlorophyll and phytoplankton analysis, and some consultative services for work when it comes to training the volunteer water team clean water team that will be doing sampling for us, along with the LA Regional Water Quality Board and the swamp contract. The requested funding for additional years will be budgeted for, and additionally, we will be consulting with Channel Islands Neighborhood Council on that cost sharing method prior to expending any of those additional funds for the following fiscal years. So as you can see here in the fiscal impact table, it does show the breakdown of the costs to the wastewater division in the amount of $698,364 and $264,792 to special districts. And within this table, you will see the allocated funding breakdown based on percentage of acreage within the Oxnard waterways portion of the Channel Islands Harbor to each of those CFDs, waterways, districts, and general fund. And with that, Jan and I will entertain questions.
Madam Clerk, I do not have any public comments on this. Is that still the status?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Council members, do you have committee questions?
I don't have any.
Okay, Mayor?
I think we lost him again.
Okay. I have some questions. We'll start with the meat and potatoes. Let's go to slide number 4. We talk a lot about why we're going to monitor stuff. Mr. Hauser, can you just give the general public an explanation of why why there's concern of us impacting the ocean, because how our plant works and where the product goes that comes out of our plant?
Yeah,
And the
sure.
treatment that's done to make sure that that product is safe for wherever it goes.
Yeah, so this is a pretty standard kind of water quality sampling related to or associated with discharge of wastewater treatment plants. So our plant is a secondary plant. It treats to a certain level that's in our permit, and it's discharged out into the ocean. It goes, we have a pipe that goes out about 6,800 feet, kind of in parallel with the Wanimi Pier. And it discharges through at the end, it's a pipe with a lot of thousands of holes, and it's called a diffuser, right? So we do this sampling to make sure that we're not negatively impacting the environment in and around the discharge pipe.
Okay, and there's a common phrase, I believe, in your industry. Mr. Nash explained it to me. The solution to pollution is dilution. The reason we can do this and the reason it's acceptable is because it's going into a larger body, but we are still required to keep it within a very finite range or we're getting hot water, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Our limits are based on the potential dilution of our receiving water body. So for instance, if you're in a very small river, your limits would probably be much lower than ours. So we're fairly lucky that we have this ocean outfall where there is a lot of dilution. So that's correct.
Thank you very much. And the reason I ask these, my fellow committee members, is sometimes the public just doesn't have a clue. And when they do, they get excited. So a little bit of education from the experts that we have at hand here, I think is good for the public. Okay, the next question I have is, go to slide number 6. And we see on slide number 6, and if we can use a pointer, please. Slide number 6, we have the special districts, and we have Westport, CFD2, Seabridge, CFD4, Mandalay Bay, Waterways Zone 1, Harbor Island, Waste Waterways Zone 2. Those are identified. Has there been discussions with those agreements, with those entities? Are they in support, or are we walking into a landmine here?
Chairman
What-
Perrello, as I previously stated within the presentation, yes, we did work with SYNC very closely, and the 4 waterways members are all members of the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council. Each CFD took this information back to their HOAs, and they did obtain a vote by their HOA to contribute their CFD funding to this project for fiscal year 2021. We did make an agreement with them that we will go back each fiscal year to discuss the additional funding that may be needed for future fiscal years for this contract. And we will not expend those funds until we have had full discussions with them. There is available for any member who would like to see it on the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council website. There is a newsletter that does indicate funding approval by each of these CFD HOAs.
Ms. Cooper, thank you very much, because there will be questions, and I wanted to get that on the record. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate your explanation. I also want to express my appreciation to the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council for being heavily involved, and the volunteers that have volunteered to help with the water testing. Kudos all around. And if there are no other questions, I request the recommendation from this committee.
Move approval.
Approval. Okay, and I would like to second that. One thing before we take a final vote on this, does the city manager or the city attorney have any comments on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can we take a roll call vote, please?
Member Flynn,
Aye.
Member McDonald,
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Yes.
The motion carries 3-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving to item 3, and on item 3, we do have we've received a letter from the Port of Hueneme, and we have 2 public speakers, Donna Lacayo and Dan Perrigallo, I believe, and I apologize if I butchered the names. But item number 3, subject, amendment to designated heavy container oversized vehicles corridor. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council adopt a resolution pursuant to the Oxnard City Code Section 19-242, amending the list of routes that may be used for transportation of heavy containers by adding the following road segments. Number 1, 5th Street from Rose Avenue to Rice Avenue. Number 2, Rose Avenue from 3rd Street to 5th Street. Number 3, 3rd Street from Juanita Avenue to Rose Avenue. Now, before we turn this over to staff, I'd like to get a clarification from the city attorney. Is this all one item, or are each of these individual item votes?
This is a single agenda item.
Okay, thank you. Okay, staff, take it away.
Although he had also worked for the city of Ventura years ago before going up north. He has already done a tremendous job of listing out a lot of the issues that we have here in Oxnard, and we're working on a work plan over the next 2 years to get those addressed. So we're very excited to have him on board and to be building up our traffic engineering section. So I'm going to let Tim go ahead and do his presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary, and morning, Chair Perrello and committee members. As
morning.
Rosemary said, my name is Tim Bokum. I'm the city traffic engineer, and before you this morning is a item to do a amendment to our truck routes, specifically our heavy weight and oversized vehicle routing in the city of Oxnard. The slide in front of you should be something familiar. This is a recent decision and truck routes map that the council recently made some modifications. The 2 streets that you see in the northern area of the map on Oxnard Boulevard and Vineyard were a recent change that is starting to try and get the trucks out of the downtown and get them located on the periphery. And that relates to our item today, in that this is an item that is requesting truck routing on the periphery and coming into the city. Specifically, we have a heavyweight truck route corridor that comes from the Port of Hueneme. It travels east-west on Hueneme Road through both the city and the county of Ventura, heads north on Rice, and then actually heads all the way to US 101. Most recently, the city adopted a slight amendment that created the Sturgis Loop. They're just on the east side of Rice Avenue, and that was most recently done in 2016. In a similar request, there were some businesses along that loop that were seeking heavier loads and the opportunity to have a specific routing to and from their site that clarified where their trucks should be.
Excuse me, can we just, before we go to that slide, can we go back to the previous slide? If there is a pointer available, not the next slide. If there's a pointer available, please indicate where you're talking about when you're talking about changes. I would appreciate that. And I'm sure members of the public that will be looking at this later, specifically business people, will appreciate it also.
Certainly. And the next couple of slides will show the specific changes that we'll be recommending to you as far as this. But the general area that this changes is in this vicinity along 5th Street, Rose, and then 3rd Street as it comes into the downtown area.
Thank you.
And as I said, this is a slide that shows specifically what that recommendation is. In April of this year, the port approached the city with a request for our consideration of whether we would consider clarifying a potential heavy truck route that would come off of that periphery system and allow access into 2 primary businesses along this corridor, and those being the Chiquita facility as well as Linear Logistics. And the important thing that really lurks behind this is the state of California and the city can restrict heavyweight trucks in and through the city. However, we really are under a mandate to try and provide these access if in fact they want to provide these. So today they could request a permit to go this direction, but there is no designated route for them to get to and from that location. There's really 2 guiding codes guidance on this. First, I'm sure you're aware that the California Vehicle Code establishes regulations regarding all the vehicles, including heavy weight vehicles. In addition, the City Code of Oxnard, Chapter 19, and specifically Sections 19, 241, and 250 discuss further how we establish these routes and what vehicles should adhere to them. And those sections are here in front of you. In essence, 241 establishes that a permit is required for any overweight vehicle or oversized vehicle as they come through the city, basically so that we can regulate and monitor their activity. We don't want them going over bridges that may not be able to take their load, or to hitting bridges that are too low, or signals or those kind of things. So we do require a permit. Most jurisdictions do. And then from a legislative standpoint, we should have those streets designated on a map, and that, of course, is what is on your agenda today. Again, that request is to access the 2 businesses here along 3rd Street. In entertaining this request, we looked at the location and its proximity to our existing route location. We felt that the request was able to be handled for a variety of reasons that I'll go into on the next slide. But primarily, we're accessing the 2 businesses along that corridor. However, any of the other businesses there that may have a need for an extra wide load or a heavy load could solicit for a permit and receive consideration. And again, this is just a slide to show where those businesses are located along this section. Here is the logistics building. And of course, I think most people know where Chiquita is. The reason that the recommendation stops at Juanita is that allows that any trucks that are coming to that site to come in, basically pick up or drop off their load and then head back out to the routes that they need to get back to the US 101 or down to the port, wherever they're going. As I said, we took into consideration a number of things as part of this request. We are required by law to assist in the delivery of produce, goods, and freight. So while we can restrict based on certain features of the infrastructure, It's really important for us to try and allow for the delivery of goods and freights. And so that's one of the things that we want to accomplish. As I said, the businesses can currently request an oversized permit. Now, however, they don't do that. Neither of these businesses currently do. This is just something they may do on an occasional basis as needs arise. Proposed routes achieve the shortest path from our existing routing, and so we felt that that was appropriate. And we reviewed all the streets to see if in fact they could accommodate these heavy loads if they come, and we believe that they can. So with that, the recommendation that we have is to approve this small appendage to our heavyweight vehicle route and just include the streets from 5th to Rose, as well as Rose to 3rd, and 3rd from Juanita to Rose. As far as the financial implication, it will be slight. There may be some need for us to change traffic route signage and some other things out there. We have available funding in our operating line items, and most of this work would be done by city staff if necessary. With that, I'll open up for any questions that you may have.
Are there any technical questions by the committee members? And if there are, please ask them now, and then we'll have the public comment, and then we'll come back to discussion and deliberation. Are there any technical questions, Mr. McDonald or Mr. Flynn?
No.
No.
Okay, public comment. We have Donna Lacayo and Mr. Dan Perrigallo. And I want to say we did receive a letter from the Port of Hueneme. And I'll ask a technical question while we're waiting for the first call. Can we give a definition of what a normal truck weight and a heavy truck weight is?
Excuse me, we've got the caller on the line. Hi, Donna.
Okay,
You've got
okay,
3 minutes
I
to
can-
address the council. I'm sorry, to address the committee on the truck item. Please begin.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much. Good morning, Mayor Flynn, council members, Mr. Perello, Mr. McDonald, members of the committee, staff. My name is Donna Lacayo. I'm the Chief Commercial and Public Affairs Officer at the Port of Hueneme. Thank you for allowing me to speak today on this item. I'm calling in support of approving the amendment of this designated heavyweight corridor in order to our important customer, Chiquita Fresh, and right next door to it, it's the cold storage provider, Lineage Logistics, as the staff member explained in his presentation just a minute ago. Both customers have requested to be able to have this designation so they can move cargo safely and support further business opportunities for them and in turn for the port, which will also support the economic development spur in the city of Oxnard. We're very proud to call Chiquita our customer and friendly Oxnard-based business partner. They embrace the strong environmental and community-based initiative. They plug in their vessels at berth and donate millions of bananas to Food Share to distribute to families in need. Chiquita is also an important business partner because they support the employment of more than 100 people in the city, and they're able to distribute over 300,000 metric tons of bananas through the port. Lineage Logistics is their largest customers are the strawberry growers that we're very familiar with in Oxnard. And they also have a rail spur connection in their facility that connects the cargo they handle to a broader supply chain distribution throughout the United States. They support 50 full-time jobs as well with benefits at their facility. And although the port has been growing our exports in the past fiscal year, we grew them by 67% more than the previous year. We're looking to grow them even further. And connecting to this heavyweight corridor, Lineage Logistics is working with the port on export opportunities such as protein and squid through the port. Thank you for your consideration and support of this business development opportunity in the city of Oxnard and the port.
I'd like to ask a question of Ms. Lacayo. May I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You're identified as the Chief Commercial and Public Affairs Officer for the Port of Hueneme.
Yes,
and I
sir.
understand that this is being asked for specific companies, but the vehicles that come out of the Port of Hueneme that may not be carrying for these two specific companies, do you check to see if they have overweight permits required to carry the heavier loads on the public streets? What is the process
That is,
that they are in
yeah, the
compliance?
process that, yes, that's a great question. The process that they're in compliance with, you know, their own company as well as the cities that they move freight through. Usually, if they are to move heavy, they have to have a heavyweight permit, and those inspections are done either randomly by the city's enforcement departments or by the city, but they would move with permit that is issued by the city. It's not something that the port issues as far as moving on city streets
So
or regulate.
if I can get a question, an answer that I can understand very clearly, the port actually trusts that the carriers are in compliance and have the appropriate permits. There is no process where the port checks before overweight vehicles go out of the port to go onto public streets.
Not that I'm aware of. I believe that that is not something that we're doing right now. Those are permits for moving cargo within the cities that they need to be compliant with, absolutely. But not that I'm aware of.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for the response. Appreciate it. Does any
No
committee
problem.
follow-up question of this speaker? Hearing none, I will go to the next gentleman, Mr. Dan Perlagao.
Hi, Dan. You have 3 minutes.
Hello,
on
this
the
is Dan.
item. Hi, 3 minutes. Please begin.
Good morning. My name is Dan Paragallo, and I'm the local sales manager for Lineage Logistics. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for allowing me to speak today on behalf of Lineage Logistics, who is in favor of the overweight corridor extension of 3rd Street. The 3 minutes allotted for me to speak today is almost the amount of time it would take an overweight truck to leave our property and make its way to the existing corridor just 1.8 miles away. Lineage Logistics has the largest network of temperature-controlled warehouses in the world. The Lineage purpose is to transform the food supply chain to eliminate waste and to help feed the world. Since its construction, our facility has supported the local strawberry harvest and currently employs close to 50 full-time team members. Over the last few years, the declining number of freezer-grade berries grown locally and weaker squid catches has caused Lineage financial difficulties. Therefore, we wish to expand our capabilities in Oxnard. Being added to the overweight corridor would enable Lineage to incorporate exports and drive more volume through the port. The exporting side of our business is labor intensive due to the strict standards put in place by the United States Department of Agriculture. The standards set forth by the USDA ensure food safety, and Lineage will need to hire more employees to meet them. We already have several customers on site who currently need to transport their product down to the Port of Long Beach for export, and several other potential customers who we have turned away because of our lack of access to the heavy corridor. According to DataMine, a database of import and export trade, there have been over 70,000 20-foot equivalent units of refrigerated containers imported through Port Hueneme this year. However, there have been less than 2,000 being exported. To be clear, that is a difference of 68,000 20-foot equivalent units of refrigerated cargo this year. If given the opportunity, Lineage can do its part to contribute by tapping into its vast customer network, which fills over 270 cold storage facilities worldwide, and we'd love to work with the port on this. If successful, this would help to bring more business to Oxnard and stimulate the local economy. Thank you again for allowing me to speak on behalf of Lineage Logistics and the 3rd Street expansion of the designated overweight corridor.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Do any committee members have a question of the speaker?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Lineage is a pretty good sized facility. And my question is going to be, do you have enough internal access for them to get throughout the entire facility? I'm thinking Juanita is probably somewhere in the area of the treetop facility, which would be on the the east end of Lineage's property. So is there enough interior circulation where they can get into your area, go to any of the cooling facilities and get back out without being in trouble with the truck route?
Yes, so we have four gates. So they could access any one of them, and one of which actually goes around our building 3. So it's one way, and they would easily be able to access and turn around. That's not an issue. I don't exactly know where that road is that you're speaking of, you know, at what point the overweight corridor would end. Not exactly, but there is enough turning radius inside our yard.
Yeah, the Juanita is somewhere in the area, would be somewhere to the west side of the treetop facility, which is on the very eastern edge of your property, I believe so. But that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, do you have a question?
I don't have a question, just it's more of a statement to say that anytime we start discussing these truck routes, and I know that trucks and trucking are an
We'll
integral.
we'll wait for the statements when we do deliberation, but I would like to thank the gentleman for his comment. We don't have another question, but okay, moving on to, so thank you very much for your calling and your comments. Okay.
Thank you.
Who would like to go first?
I'll let the mayor go since he was halfway through.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I was just going to make a quick statement. I mean, obviously trucking is an integral part of the logistics of the port. And I think this, anytime we start talking about truck routes and we're talking about logistics and a lot of these questions, it makes me also think about the future of trains in their role in the viability, the economic expansion and viability of the port. And that's it. And that's the only statement I had to make.
Okay.
I have a couple comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. First off, to our traffic engineer, welcome aboard. I'm glad you're here. I do hear good response from the community when you've reached out at my request to work with them. So thank you for that effort. My question is specifically to the packing houses to the west of Lineage Logistics that deal with lemons, I believe. Are we going to have any weight issues with those vehicles getting into their facility? Because that's well beyond the end of the truck route.
Very good question. Committee Member McDonald, very much as it is today, anybody who would have a need to perform a overweight permit to that area could apply to us and just have a small permit to do that very small next section. The reason that we were recommending Juanita is it's mid-block between the bridge and Rose Avenue. So on a map, it looks like, hey, we definitely don't want you going as far as the bridge coming into downtown. So we felt it was a logical terminus to at least provide access to logistics facilities. But if there's a need to have trucks going farther to the west, we would be able to accommodate that under a permit under today's recommendation.
Okay,
We have not had any requests, as far as I know, we haven't had any requests from those businesses yet to perform heavy load assignments.
Okay, and just an observation, I'm presuming this will probably be the honor system because the enforcement aspect of this would be the law enforcement agency. In order to enforce it, you're going to need someone that's certified in commercial vehicles and also can do weights and has scales, portable scales. So I just don't see where our police department has the capability of actually enforcing these permits without some measurable way of figuring out how heavy the load is. So I just hope that people are going to comply with our requests.
That is true. The good news about creating the designated corridor is we know where they should be. So if we see them in other areas out there, then we know that they shouldn't be there. And it's easier to at least pull them over and find out what they're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much also. I have a couple of questions of the traffic engineer. Welcome aboard. And I second Councilman McDonald's comments. I haven't met you, but I know that the city is hiring very good people. So you got to be a good guy and you're going to keep, let it go. Okay, a couple of questions. What do we mean when we use the term heavy truck?
State of California, a vehicle code establishes the heavy weight restrictions at about 20,000 per axle load. So it depends on the actual size of the vehicle and the load that's being delivered. But in general, we look at permitting something that's at the 20,000 pounds per axle. There are other designations such as the width of the vehicle. I think that's 8.5 feet wide. If it's got a certain length, we would have a permit of that. It's really there to really address these odd vehicles, these extra legal loads that have to get through an area so that you're ensuring that they're not hitting things or going over bridges that have been designed for their weight and those kind of things.
But, and I could be wrong. One time I understood that the 80,000 pound limit for this tractor trailer, is that no longer in place or is in place, or that's considered a heavy load and that needs a permit?
Yes, Chairman Perello, that is the maximum vehicle weight in the entire vehicle. And I believe that the city Oxnard code actually allows up to 95,000 as a permit, but I don't think we permit loads in excess of that 80 to 95,000. So 80,000 total, we would also request a permit, even if their per axle load was less than that.
So
less than the 20,000.
And so I don't make a mistake again and mishearing something. I appreciate your explanation, but I just want to understand. 80,000 pounds is the limit and we would need a permit for 80,000 pounds?
Correct.
City of Oxnard allows 95,000 pounds?
Up to 95,000 per our current ordinance.
Okay. The streets that we are going over and we're going to be adding to these, are the conditions of those streets acceptable? Because on slide number 10, if we can put that back up, the bullet point number 5, it says use is anticipated to be occasional and will be monitored. And again, it's kind of like a two-parter here. Monitored and occasional. We have the city attorney address on this, what occasional means and monitored. And I know this is not a legal document we're looking at, but certain neighborhoods and certain streets have been pounded to holy bejesus out of them. And when you see more trucks on and you have residents complain about the quality of the streets and they want more paving jobs, the city of Oxnard having limited amounts of funds for these paving jobs and doing a good work with what we have, this is a concern to me. So what does the term occasional mean and will be monitored? And if the city attorney can answer that better, I'd appreciate that.
I'll take a shot at it. I'm not sure it's a legal definition that we're looking for here. The term occasional really is to reflect the fact that there is an existing request out here to slightly modify what's going to and from the two businesses. That may increase over time, as we heard from the public speaker. They may be looking at bringing additional work and produce into the area. But initially, the thought is that this will be a one-off, a couple of permits that may occur over a monthly basis. We'll be monitoring how many permits we issue to get a feel for what those vehicle weights are, how they're coming through the area. And then, of course, we'll monitor the pavement conditions that are out there to see if there's any kind of deterioration. We just completed a full overlay on 5th Street from Rose all the way out to Rice. And so that roadway has been brought up to not quite current standards, but has been improved from what the conditions were. And then, as I said, both Rose and 3rd Street are in fairly good condition right now and should be able to tolerate these weights. But it's just like anything, the permits will sort of be dictated out by the need, and we'll only know the need as the permits start coming in and we can sort of see how they operate. But we'll monitor that, on an annual basis and periodic basis to make sure that they're not destroying the streets. That's the last thing we'd want to have happen as part of this new routing.
I want to compliment you right off the bat. I was going to hope for 18 months report back, and you mentioned annual. This better than expected. Thank you very much. A couple of other questions. I don't know which part of the staff can handle this. And I will explain why I'm asking the question after I ask the question. When people are applying for the permits, what is involved with getting the permit? Do you have to make an in-person request? You have to make an appointment? Is it over or online? How is that done? That's my question. The reason I'm asking. The past several years, there have been a lot of opportunities for truck and trailers to be used in our Christmas parade. And they've graciously, some charged, some have volunteered, but in my opportunity to deal with some of them, I had been told a couple of things, and one of them was the city of Oxnard could make a lot more money with the permits if it was a lot easier to get the permits. And since the rigmarole that's involved, it's a lot easier to just avoid getting the permits. And I was given a heads up by, an individual who that's his business, and he made a point out of it. So I'm asking, what is the process to get a permit? And with my comment, is there any consideration to possibly make it easier so it's more effective and more beneficial to the community?
Certainly, Chairman Perallo. Right now, well, pre-COVID, someone who was soliciting for a permit could do it multiple ways. They could come to the office and actually get the permit issued at our counter. They could also submit via a fax. Most of the trucking companies all know how the fax systems, and a lot of them prefer that way because then they just send the completed permit in for review and the payment that takes place. I have been in discussions with the County of Ventura. They have an online system that they use in order to do their permit issuance. And so I think what we'll be moving towards is something more efficient, where there may be a system that parallels the county system, that someone who's coming through, as you can recall our map, somebody who's coming from the port accessing US 101 would have to go through 2 jurisdictions, both the county and the city. And it seems like what we want to work towards is having a unified system that may be easier for haulers in order to get their permits, and they don't have to go to 2 locations but 1. So that's one of the things I'll be looking into in the future to see if that makes sense from a perspective of making it simpler for the haulers.
Thank you very much. I'm very impressed with the information you're giving here. We definitely want to make it easy for commerce to occur. We definitely want to make sure that commerce is successful, and we definitely want to protect the assets and the residents in the city of Oxnard. Thank you very much for your report and answering the questions. Appreciate it.
Chair, I have one additional question I forgot to ask.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. McDonald.
We've been working with Caltrans District 7 about the signage on the 101 freeway to make sure there's no signage to get off Oxnard Boulevard as a truck route. Have we made any progress in having them replace that signage to direct people to Rice Avenue or Sturgis? Or I'm sorry, Del Norte rather?
I'm going to ask City Engineer Tatiana Arnaud to come up and talk to that.
Committee Member McDonald, yes, so we did speak to them about November of last year. They said it could take anywhere from 12 to 18 months to get that signage replaced. So we will follow up with them to see where the status of that is and report back.
Okay, and I know the Region 7 director has just announced his, well, not just announced, but he is retiring fairly quickly. If and I have regular meetings with Region 7 through VCTC. If there's some help I can offer in talking with them, I'd be happy to do so at the next VCTC meeting if appropriate.
A gentle nudge would be nice.
I can nudge.
I know.
Any other questions from committee or comments? Okay. What's a true pleasure of the committee?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, a roll call vote, please.
Member Flynn,
Aye.
Member McDonald,
Aye.
Chair Perallo.
Yes.
The
I would
motion
like to
approve
thank-
carries 3-0.
I would like to thank each and every member of the staff that was involved in this. Thank you very much. Moving to the last item, and as I had mentioned on the after the public comment, items for future agendas. Do we have any items for future agendas? And after that, we'll have a response to the public comment between that and adjournment. Councilmember Flynn, Mayor Flynn, do you have an item for future agenda?
I other than the update, I wanted to make sure that the intelligent traffic system is addressed more comprehensively at the committee level this next month.
Okay. Councilmember McDonald?
Nothing that's not already pending.
Okay. Okay. And before we adjourn, there was a public speaker during public comments item not on the agenda that brought up issues, and I'm wondering if our city manager or city attorney can add a little light into his concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Stein made a previous Public Records Act request for documents that support the proposed costs and financing of the Parks Master Plan. The City Clerk's Office, in coordination with Public Works staff, provided Mr. Stein the CIP for 2020 to 2025 and notified Mr. Stein that the CIP document supports the proposed costs and financing of the Parks Master Plan. So now he has asked a somewhat different question in his public comment today, and Public Works staff looked into that, and I believe they have determined that the cost is about $323,000. So that is the response to that different question that Mr. Stein asked in his Public Records Act request. So this is, if I can note that since it comes up and it's taking this meeting time and staff's additional time, that Mr. Stein has numerous Public Records Act requests, and staff spends quite a bit of city resources in addressing those requests. And it is perhaps I would say a larger burden than most residents have on city resources to address his concerns, and especially if he does not provide clarity in working with staff to satisfy those requests.
And I want to thank you very much for addressing this. And I would just like to weigh in on this. Yes, Mr. Stein makes a lot of requests. But as every member of the public has an opportunity to live in this great country we live in, the state we live in, you got a right to ask the questions. But as the city attorney has stated, it sure as heck helps if you're very, very specific what you want. If you're casting a big fishing net, hoping to catch the whole school of fish, it doesn't work that way. You need to be very specific in what you're asking, because time and labor comes at a cost, and they're all coming at a cost that the public is shouldering. And I do not mean to put Mr. Stein down at all, but sometimes, Mr. Stein, please narrow the focus of your questions so that there's no way that somebody can go, well, I thought you meant this, or I thought you meant that. Be very specific with the English language, what you're asking for. And again, thank you, Mr. Fisher, for addressing the question. With no other, does the city manager wish to weigh in at all?
No, thank you.
Okay, with no other comments, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.